Hi, I'm Misha DeBono. Thanks for joining us today on QSN Direct. If you have bad credit or no credit, are swimming in debt and can't pay off your bills, if wealth seems like a far-off dream, stay tuned. My guest is New York Times best-selling author and foremost consumer advocate Kevin Treadeau. In his new book, Debt Cures They Don't Want You to Know About, Kevin goes after the banking and credit card industries and is blowing the lid off what he calls the greatest ripoff of American citizens in our nation's history. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
You know, I've read a couple of your other books, fascinating. Tell me, why did you decide to take on the banking and credit card industry?
Well, Misha, the first book, Natural Cures They Don't Want You to Know About, I took on the pharmaceutical and the healthcare industry, and I exposed that industry. Over 15 million copies of my books now have been sold all throughout the world. This book takes on the banking industry and the credit card industry. And if a person is watching right now and you have credit card debt, maybe you're maxed out on your credit cards, maybe you're dealing with paying these enormous late fees or very high interest payments, maybe your monthly payments are really out of control and you're really struggling in debt. Maybe it's student loans, maybe it's mortgages, car payments, maybe you have to use payday loans or even go to pawn shops just to kind of make ends meet. There's a problem in America that is not being talked about, and the U.S. government, the federal government, is part to blame. They're actually working with the banking industry, creating laws and making regulations, allowing the credit card companies, Misha, and the banks to, in my opinion, this is what I talk about in the book, rip off the American citizen. The American citizen today doesn't have a prayer. The system is geared to keep them in debt. The laws are written, and the way that the banking fees work, it's all designed to keep a person in debt, make sure that they're late on their payments, make sure that they're overdrawn on their bank accounts, make sure that they're over their credit limit on their credit cards, making sure that the fees continue to go up and up and up, interest and penalties, keeping people in debt and making them go further and further and further in debt. I believe this is one of the greatest rip-offs in American history, and people just don't know what they need to know to solve that problem. Now, there are answers. The good news is that's why I wrote the book. Yes, I exposed the industry, and I'm one of the most hated guys right now in corporate America. I've gotten death threats because of my exposés and my whistleblowing on the various industries that I've already exposed in my books. This book here, I think, is going to cause just massive confusion, if you will, with the banking industry and the credit card industry, but it's going to help millions of people lower their payments and get out of debt very, very quickly.
Well, it's counterintuitive to how sort of we are raised growing up thinking that you want to get a credit card because you want to establish good credit from an early point in your life.
Well, debt is okay and credit is good. Those aren't bad things. Yes, credit is a good thing. As a matter of fact, you can build wealth with credit. Imagine if a person, for example, watching right now wanted to start a business, they can't get credit to start that business. Well, if they know how to do it, they can get $1 million in credit and they can start their own business. So credit is very good. Everyone throughout history has used credit and used financing to build wealth. That's good. But the way the credit card companies, the payday loans, the mortgages, the debt consolidation, the debt collecting industry, that whole industry is designed to screw the American consumer. That's the problem. I'll give you an example of this. A person gets a credit card. Now, 4 billion credit card applications go out every single year. 4 billion. I got one for my dog. I mean, it's insanity. They'll send them out to anybody.
You get them 10 a day.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the way they make the money is they charge you this enormous sign-up fee. So we're going to give you this credit card with a $200 limit. They're going to charge you this enormous sign-up fee. Then they're going to charge you this monthly maintenance fee. I don't know what the heck that is. There are like 9 different fees on one of these credit card scams, I call them, that people don't even know about. You ever see all the terms and conditions on these credit cards, like page after page? Nobody reads them.
Well, what you're saying right now, yeah, a sign-up fee, I've never heard of that.
It's insanity. And then what they do is they want you to be late. There are people at credit card companies, employees, who have come forward with, under the shadow of darkness for fear of losing their jobs, who've said, our credit card company, when a payment comes in from the customer, we're told to either shred it or hold it so that it'll show up late, so we can charge them a $25, $35, or $45 late fee. So the bank can make more money. That's a ripoff. There was one particular bank that was found fraudulent, that was charged with fraud, and they had to pay $400 million in fines. That wasn't front page news, was it?
No.
Nobody ever heard about it. A credit card company, millions of people have this credit card. They were found to be ripping off the American consumer, charged with fraud, and had to pay $400 million in penalties. And guess what? They didn't care because they were making so much money ripping off the consumer, it was just a drop in the bucket. Now here's the scary thing. The director of that bank, the U.S. government then hired him to be the new ethics czar for business. So here's a guy who's involved in a company that's just been found fraudulently screwing the American consumer, ripping them off, and had to pay $400 million in fines because the poor people who have credit cards are just getting ripped off. And then this guy is then given by the federal government, the president assigns him to be the ethics czar for businesses. There's a problem. The federal government and the banking industry are in bed. This is what I exposed with the pharmaceutical industry. So people who have credit cards don't know their rights and don't know how to get out of debt. And that's what this book, Debt Cures, actually tells people how to do. So some of the things, for example, in this book, I tell people how to do. If they have credit card payments that they're all maxed out, there's a simple technique that nobody knows. That's why these are the secrets that the banks don't want people to know. They are furious that I'm blowing the lid on this. There's a technique that virtually every person who has credit card debt can cut their payments in half virtually overnight. In half. There's another technique that if you have $10 or $20 or $30,000 in credit card debt, you can completely wipe out that debt.
How is it that people don't know about this?
Well, who's going to tell them? The banks? I mean, think about it. The banks are making their money by, and I'll say it again, by screwing the American consumer. A major senior official, I think it was the president of one of the largest banking groups in the world, said, we make most of our money by the people who are the most desperate in need of credit cards and loans. Those people who can't afford to repay. That's our bread and butter. Now, this is sad because minorities, African Americans, people who have low-income jobs, these are the people that the banks are targeting and putting the screws to. These are the weakest people, and it's a form of slavery. The banks are specifically designed to take these millions of people and keep them in poverty and keep them in debt, and it's a scam.
So what can people do today? Because a lot of people, let's face it, are significantly in debt with credit cards. So what can they do?
And one of the reasons why I wrote the book is I tell people the very simple steps, and it's just about knowledge. It's just about knowing. Again, the banks are taking advantage of people. If people know what to do, they can reverse the roles. They can get control. If a person, for example, right now is watching, and you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, if you're up to your eyes in debt, if you can't pay your bills, if you don't have a credit card, if you have bad credit, if you have no credit, if you're constantly getting whacked with late fees and these high interest payments, if you have debt collectors continuing to harass you and hound you, you can stop the insanity right now. You can stop these predators, is really what they are. A person, for example, in here, I tell them how to cut their total payments in half virtually overnight. I tell them how to eliminate their debt. Did you know that there are programs, for example, one of the chapters in the book, Misha, is free money from the U.S. government. People don't know. If they just make a phone call, I list the phone numbers in here, I give the addresses, the email addresses. It's very simple to do. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to do this. But there are programs that are set up right now that by making a phone call, filling out a simple form, you can get $10,000 or $20,000 in cash, money, and you never have to repay it. And you can use it to pay off your bills.
What?
Yes.
People are going to listen to this. That's crazy.
Well, guess who used some of these programs? The millionaires and the billionaires. These are the people who've used and made much of their fortunes by these programs, using some of these techniques themselves. That's what they use to make their money and keep